Hello and welcome to Higher Automation, the podcast brought to you by Hai Robotics, where we explore future-ready solutions for your inventory, fulfillment, and warehouse operations. Today, we're tackling the hidden costs of peak season. Surges in customer demand during the holiday season and other peak periods can come with a storm of hidden expenses, from hiring temp labor and adding shifts to dealing with operational inefficiencies and increased order errors. Many companies begrudgingly accept these expenses as the cost of doing business, but it doesn't have to be that way. I'm here with Hunter Senn and Hunter Leum from Hai Robotics USA to talk about these challenges, show how you can quantify their true financial impact, and explore how warehouse automation can help you sidestep peak season obstacles, preserve profits, and keep operations running smoothly year-round. And I will officially bring on our guest right now. Hunter Senn is Director of Sales for Hai Robotics USA. Hunter Leum is a Business Development Manager for Hai Robotics USA. Thank you both, Hunters, for being with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us today, Michelle.
Looking forward to getting into the conversation. I do have to address the elephant in the room here. Two Hunters. So are we doing Hunter 1, Hunter 2, Hunter A, Hunter B? What are your thoughts here?
Hunter, you make the call here.
You know what? Since I have two first names, even though it's not spelled the same, you can just call me by my last name, Liam. That'll work for today.
Okay. So before we kind of get into the Q and A, Liam, and I know this is your first podcast, I believe, that you're doing with us, right?
That's right.
Yeah, excited to have you here. So can we get a brief bio starting with you, Liam, just before we kind of get into the official questioning?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm with the business development team here at Hai Robotics, helping build out our U.S. presence. And before that, spent about 7 years in the supply chain consulting world, looking at different technologies and automation and supply chain strategies for leading enterprises, both in the U.S. and globally.
And Senn, Hunter Senn, but we're just going to call you for the purposes of this podcast, Senn.
Yeah, no problem. Hunter Senn, Director of Sales for Hai Robotics US. Very much looking forward to our conversation today. Been in the industry my entire career and was previously with an integrator and been through a handful of peak seasons. So really looking forward to our conversation today and jumping into it.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover. So I want to start here. What are some of the most significant costs that warehouses and fulfillment centers face during peak season?
Yeah, the biggest thing today is really temp labor. That's the no-brainer. That's what everyone's talking about. And when you look at temp labor, most people associate temp labor with a dollar sign, and that dollar sign is associated with the salary, the hourly wage that you're going to have to pay that prospective employee. But not only is it temp labor today and factoring that into your bottom line, which will have a direct impact on your bottom line, it's also about finding that labor. And that's become a challenge in today's market, is not only the impact to your bottom line, but how am I going to find the employees that I need to get through peak season? You know, you look at some of these retailers and large e-commerce players, there's a thing we say in the industry is what's your average to peak ratio? And really what that entails is your average has a certain throughput, so your average day. And a lot of people, when it comes to peak season, that will spike. That'll go through the roof. You can look at 2x, 3x, even 4x spike when it comes to peak season because everyone getting their orders in. Obviously, brick and mortar stores are kind of fading away and everything's going online ordering with SLAs just going through the roof. People are ordering later and later in the season, which puts increased pressure on distribution centers. So where I was going with that is it's forcing people to not only hire more temp labor, they have to find that temp labor. And then a lot of times they're having to push to add a second shift and add a third shift because of the demands of that average to peak ratio. So I think that's the big thing when it comes to preparing for peak season is how am I going to find the bodies, the right bodies, properly trained, and make sure they're equipped to not only work first shift, but make sure I also have coverage across first shift, second shift, and third shift as peak season demands continue to increase for retailers.
And to your point, It seems like, at least from my standpoint of a consumer, that peak season is starting earlier and earlier and earlier. We're seeing these Black Friday sales. They're
Exactly.
literally happening. We've barely finished with Halloween. So it's not only hiring those temp workers, but needing them for a longer period, which gets us even more, money woes and pain points there. So let's talk about some of the less obvious costs that may be overlooked. Liam?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And kind of going off of Senn's comment, a lot comes down to temp labor. A lot comes down to temp labor that you have to find and hire. However, you also need to take into consideration how that labor force performs. Like Hunter mentioned, you have to start training this labor, and how early are you bringing them in to get ramped up for peak season? Are they ready for the changes in the operation that might come with peak season? So you have to get them up to speed on your operation. And a lot of times that also means that you're pulling some of your top performers, your supervisors, your team leads from the operation to train up this new staff. And with temporary labor and with the increased orders that are coming into facilities during peak season, one of the issues that you might run into is pick accuracy and order accuracy. And during this time, during the holidays, inevitably, there will be more returns. What's important is to ensure those returns are due to buyer error. Maybe they got the wrong size or someone didn't like their gift, instead of operational errors. So with temp labor and with your staff stretched thin, you're more likely to have these types of operational errors leading to mispicks. So you need to have a way to address that in your finding labor and bringing them up to speed and getting them familiar with your operations so that you can still achieve high order accuracy and pick accuracy.
One metric that Hunter alluded to is really returns. And I think year over year, the amount of returns is growing drastically. Michelle, you kind of mentioned this and alluded to people are buying earlier and earlier. Peak season seems to start earlier every year. Black Friday is almost at the end of the cycle now in terms of discounts. And then also you add on brick and mortar stores not being as popular and everyone ordering online. One of the results of that is astonishing more amount of returns, right? You're not in the store, you're not going to the dressing room and trying on these different sizes. You're ordering a medium and large, and then you're returning something. Like, I can't tell you how often my wife is going back to FedEx, back to UPS, whoever it may be, with a ton of packages for returns. And that's just almost become kind of our standard operating procedure because we're not going to brick and mortar stores. And more importantly, I don't know if the industry truly understands the impact on distribution centers just yet. Returns are notoriously expensive to handle within the distribution center network. And that's because it's so difficult to handle. If you think about it, it's not a full case coming back, which would be your standard operating procedure. It's a one piece item. It's onesies and twosies. So you have to have good practices in place for how to accept those returns into your building and then funnel those back through your kind of outbound operations and your inventory management. And you could be getting returns in the middle of peak season. So you have to have a good, robust plan for returns. So I absolutely second what Hunter said. I think that is a quote unquote hidden cost that a lot of people may not be prepared for.
Yeah, and I'm right there with your wife. Many, many trips to FedEx and UPS. And I think another added point to that, a lot of times I think we're finding more purchasing done online because the inventory is simply not there in the brick and mortar store. So you're forced to buy multiple sizes and then they're not all being kept. So great point there. And I am guilty as charged. So why do so many businesses see these added costs as just the cost of doing business? Are they underestimating the financial impact?
Yeah, and again, I don't want to pretend to speak for everyone. Every situation obviously varies drastically by operation, but I think a big part of it is just not truly understanding the impact to the bottom line. So I think it actually goes back to Hunter's point previously. There is a lot of hidden cost that people may not be understanding or interpreting properly. And what I really mean by that is temp labor. Again, I kind of alluded to this. You associate a dollar sign with that temp labor. That dollar sign is typically restricted to how much you're going to pay that particular employee per hour. but you're not thinking of the other costs associated with that temp worker, associated costs such as training. Now I got to take a senior supervisor, train the temp worker. That's costs associated with both. Picking accuracy. What costs do you want to put on your customer satisfaction and your customer receiving the proper order that they ordered online? So I think there's a lot of hidden costs. In addition to that, we talked about the peak fluctuation. People are having to shift to second shift and third shift. What's the cost impact to that? And it's not just labor, it's overtime pay, it's your electric bill, it's a whole host of different factors. So again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think it is extremely important to understand the true impact to your bottom line and how staying manual or going into automation can impact that. And then the last thing I'd say is I still think there's a little bit of fear, may be a strong word of choice, but reluctance to dive into automation. There's still a little bit of fear out in the market on what is the true impact of robotics and how can I work this into my automation. So I think they've had a game plan that's worked, and that's traditionally manual. But as you look at more demands from throughput, SLAs, how much inventory you're storing on hand, I think more people are going to have to take that leap of faith into automation.
Yeah. And a follow-up to that. So let's talk about the good part here, because as you said, there is that trepidation,
Yeah.
What are we doing with automation? How does it work? Can it make things worse? Well, basically, we're here to tell you that there are so many solutions and it can make things so much easier. That's the point of this podcast episode, right? So how can warehouse automation help alleviate these pain points specifically that we see during peak season time?
Yeah. And again, Hunter Senn, tons of good points in that last question. And I would say is what it comes down to, what we've heard through the last few questions and what matters to the business, right? Or what should matter to the business is how are you serving your customer? And customers have higher demands during the holiday season. There might be a short window where they need a product. The Amazon effect is very present, and retailers are still playing catch up. A lot of retailers are trying to get those that delivery time down. And this year in particular, with the very late Thanksgiving, that means that Black Friday's further down the road. That means that Cyber Monday's further down the road. I have a sister with an early December birthday. Usually I have a few weeks to capitalize on those deals and get her present, to my door. This year, I only have 4 business days after Cyber Monday for that to come in. And I would much rather give her a physical gift than I would a piece of paper that shows her, what gift is coming in. So I need to rely on retailers who can get these items not just into their facility, but then out of their facility to me. And that's something that automation can certainly help with in terms of increasing throughput, increasing your storage density for this time around the holidays. It's important that they can both carry more inventory, that then this automation can also help with achieving their higher throughput targets and just making life easier on the employees inside the facility as well, so that they're spending time doing the work that matters to getting these orders out the door.
I think that's a great point, Hunter. In summary, at the end of the day, customer demands are increasing. So with customer demands increasing, you have to increase how you operate and manage your distribution channel. And that's kind of the end of the story there. Demands are increasing and you have to keep up with the ever-changing industry and world that we're in today.
So I want to play devil's advocate here for a moment, because we're talking about those money suckers, right? The temp labor and some other operating costs that we see during peak season. What about the people that are saying, you know what, the cost of investing in warehouse automation to manage seasonal demand spikes is just that, another cost to tack on to all of the rest? Aren't they all the same?
Yeah, Michelle, you're absolutely right. Automation, without a doubt, is another expense. And when you look at some of the lead times today, that can be daunting as well, right? Typically, depending on the level of automation you're looking at, this is not a 1-month project, right? So it's without a doubt a commitment and really a mindset and operational and business fundamental change. But at the end of the day, it comes down to ROI. It comes down to the return on investment. You have to do your research. You have to know the data. You have to do the numbers and run the math. Again, I would never say a blanket statement that any and every business out there needs automation, right? That's not what we're saying, but there is a use case, and that's been proven time and time again. So I would just encourage, people out there considering making the leap of faith into automation, look at the return on investment. If you invest in automation, what is that payback period going to be? Are you going to be cash flow neutral on it in 3 years? And then not only that, ROI is without a doubt most important metric you need to take into consideration. But if you make the leap into automation, what does that do for your business? What is that fundamentally shifting for you? So the ROI is more of the quantitative approach, but there's also a qualitative aspect to this as well. Look at your warehouse with automation and robots. All of a sudden, there's value add within your distribution operations. Maybe you take on more inventory now. You're increasing your SLAs. Not only your customer satisfaction has gone through the roof, but your employee satisfaction. We find that employees really in the warehouse very much enjoy interacting with the robots and cutting edge technology and seeing it all there. So without a doubt, a quantitative measurement to it that typically comes in the form of ROI, which everyone needs to do. But there's also a qualitative aspect that I wouldn't undermine. I would really pay attention to that and understand what it could do from a business standpoint for you as well, if you choose to take the leap of faith into the automation.
Yeah, and I just want to hit off of that as well, Hunter Senn. Like the value that it could bring to, we've been talking about temp labor, and people in this labor has options too. Like your warehouse is likely in a place where there's 4 other warehouses around you. What's setting you apart to get this temp labor to your warehouse? And sometimes it can be something like what Hunter said, this automation, these robots. It's something that they come to work and they enjoy interacting with. Again, it makes their lives easier. So I think that was a really good point in terms of the value add of automation, both quantitative and qualitatively for the business.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to both of your points, I mean, you think about it, happy employees, if you don't have the employees there at all,
Yeah, exactly.
you can talk about things that are fully automated, but not even from the temp employee standpoint. But then you have your year-round employees that are just feeling that hecticness. I mean, we're human, right? We all feel the of the season.
Absolutely.
So it's going to make it easier for everybody. So for businesses considering investing in automation, what are some initial steps that can help them gauge the value during peak periods?
Yeah. And again, I think Hunter Senn made some great points on the last question that'll bleed into this question, but peak season is already in full swing this year. And now we're in evaluation stage. You need to know what's going on in your facility. What does your data tell you? Data is so important. Data will continue to drive decisions. So you got to understand, where are there gaps in this data? And the better you understand your key performance indicators like throughput, order accuracy, handling time, the better you'll be able to start your business case for improvements next peak season. And if you need some quick guidance, we've put together a peak season checklist you can check out. You can look out for it on our social media page, as well as download it from our website. So it'll give you some tips and what to look out for while you're going through these peak season challenges.
Hard to believe we are almost out of time. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I think just to summarize everything, a great conversation today. And again, appreciate you having us on, Michelle. But peak season is inevitable, and it's coming for all retailers and really across the board. Everyone seems to see some level of peak, from average to peak, and a spike in their volume. So we would just encourage you, be prepared, get educated on it, gather data, and then the checklist that Hunter alluded to, please walk through that. That may help uncover some hidden costs that you're not prepared for within the peak season fluctuation. And as always, Hunter and myself and everyone at the Hai Robotics team, we are here to help. We are consultants. We want to be industry experts, and we don't want to just sell. We want to help you and help drive your business as challenges continue to evolve. So please reach out to us on any of our social media pages or email us. We'd love to help in any way we can. And we wish all of our retailers best of luck during this peak season, as it's about to enter a full swing here.
Absolutely. Hunter Senn, Director of Sales, Hai Robotics USA, and Hunter Leum, Business Development Manager for Hai Robotics USA. Thank you, both Hunters, for joining me today. It's been a fun one, and some great information for those who are feeling a little bit of that pinch here during the peak season. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I do want to remind you, once again, you can get your copy of the peak season cost tracker that Hunter Leum mentioned. That link is in the show notes. And also you can visit the Hai Robotics website at hairobotics.com. I want to thank you for tuning in to Hire Automation, a podcast, of course, brought to you by Hai Robotics. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to connect with you on another podcast soon.